So the work with the Marsala wreck. Regrettably, the author of the first paper has had some family injury, and at the last minute was unable to come. The lovely Alanya family, who also provided the wine for us last night. So the paper will be read by Claire Calcagno and Elena Flavia, and obviously we won't be able to carry questions on this one. So if I'd like to welcome to the floor Claire Calcagno and Elena Flavia, talking about the archaeological mission of the Punic ship. Thank you.
So, as already said by Lucy Blue, I regret to say that Paola Lagna, who was going to read her father's paper, at the very last minute was unable to come to Nicosia. So she asked me and Claire to tell you that she is really disappointed not to be here with us today, but hopes that at least that Marsala wine that we enjoyed at the reception last night, donated by her family's winery at Marsala, the Cantine Pellegrino of Marsala, shows you all that the Alagna family is indeed here with us, literally in spirit. So I give the floor to Claire Calcagno, who has mother tongue, will be easily to follow.
Hello. Guess it without glasses. Okay. So the discovery of the Punic vessel was due to chance. In fact, in 1969, the Sicilvetro Glass Company of Marsala decided to create a new line of bottles. To do so, they decided to collect the sand off the coastline of Marsala, and more specifically, the sand coming from the sea area surrounding the Isola Grande of the Stagnone lagoon. May I have a light? Sorry. Oh, thank you. Pardon me. Okay. Eccoci qua. So, yes, thank you. So they began to dredge the area of Punta Scario, and that led to the discovery of ship timbers that were quickly recognized as having been fashioned in an unfamiliar way compared with the local wooden boats and ships known at the time. The captain of the dredger, Diego Bonini, brought these unusual timbers to the attention of some archaeologists who were staying at the time on the island of Mozia, property of the Whittaker family. They included the German archaeologist Gerard Kapitein, who knew Honor Frost for her studies on the ancient ports of the Near East. He thought of her as the right person to provide expertise in order to determine the origins of those shipwreck timbers. So he informed Honor Frost of the discovery and invited her to visit Mozia. Honor gladly accepted and arrived in Mozia, welcomed by the property owner, Delia Whittaker. Only Honor could have explored the area and conduct high-level scientific work. Honor immediately recognized that the timbers derived from a Roman shipwreck, and she planned everything to explore the territory where the dredger had operated. Actually, it is not certain which wreck the specific pieces of wood found by Captain Bonini belonged to, because initial surveys, 1969, in that area located more than 16 different ancient wrecks. The Punic vessel of Marsala was discovered at the end of the following season in August 1971 and studied and recovered over the next 2 years. 3 years, actually. Taking note of the treasures this coastline held, Honor did her utmost to obtain the necessary permit for the excavation from the Ministry of Public Instruction. On a bureaucratic level, the permit for the archaeological research was granted to the British School at Rome, which named Honor Frost director of the Punic Ship Project. The Archaeological Superintendency of Palermo, which was responsible for this part of Sicily, did not participate directly in the actual archaeological work, but nonetheless monitored the work being conducted at the site over the course of several fieldwork seasons. Once the authorization had been obtained, Honor came back to Marsala. With the cooperation of Eduardo Lipari, a winemaking expert and bailiff administrator for Delia Whitaker of Mozia, she obtained from the local branch of the Italian Finance Police the use of an abandoned barracks located near the beach where the first wreck remains of the vessel had been found. Honor used the barracks as a base from which to organize her first survey mission. The barracks' position was optimal, but the facility didn't have anything. There was no drinking water, no electricity, and even access was difficult. I think some of us are familiar with that kind of environment for archaeological work. But anyway, try to imagine the inconveniences and the difficulties that Honor and her collaborators had to face. Nonetheless, the work was kept going with considerable success. Now, I, meaning Dr. Pietro Alagna, I was first informed about the shipwreck excavation by Eduardo Lipari, the bailiff, in the later summer of 1971, and my collaboration with Honor began from that moment on, near the end of the second field season in Marsala. Our collaboration had not only an administrative aspect, but also important technical and material aspects as well, given the scarcity of means and financial resources at the mission's disposal. Firstly, I made available a villa of mine. Now, let's see if I can get, this is going to go, actually, yeah, I guess I should have shown the other, I'll show the other picture in a minute. Firstly, I made available a villa of mine located in Santa Venera, in the suburbs of Marsala. It had wide open spaces and storage rooms where Honor started the planning for the 1971 season and where she developed the framework for the mission's complex organization. She searched for staff to participate in the excavation everywhere. She sent an invitation to all the archaeologists interested in the program, professional and non-professional ones. 40 people came from every part of the globe. I think there were more than 40, but among those, I remember the Australian archaeologist William Culligan, an expert in ancient ceramics. I also remember a young Canadian woman specialized in plaster casts, who might be Mary Anderson, and the Sicilian archaeologist Francesco Lombardo, an expert in drawing, and also several underwater photographers. The recovery operations, contrary to what most people might have expected, took place slowly. First of all, Honor needed to conduct the research underwater. She wanted to document with photos and meticulous drawings everything found on the seabed as they proceeded with the site cleaning through the removal of seaweed and sand and before everything was brought to the surface. Many professionals abandoned the mission. Only the very best remained, the most passionate. Among them, I remember Peter Ball, who went on to a career in the archaeological section of the British Museum in London. I'll show you the other picture, just to have something else to look at. After the underwater recordings were completed, the recovery of the ship timbers began. Together with Eduardo Lipari, we provided a barge for Honor and her team, a barge that was normally employed for salt transport between the salt works of Trapani and Marsala. You see how all the local industries ended up having facilities that helped with the archaeological mission. We also provided the assistance of a seaman, Stefano Passalacqua, who participated for the entire duration of the mission over several years, a Man Friday. The wet wood was retrieved and subject to desalinization with clean running water, initially in vats that we had built specifically for the process. These were initially located between Santa Venera and my house, located in Via del Fante in Marsala, and at a later stage they were located in Palermo at the Archaeological Superintendency in Via Bara. Once the wood had been desalinized, a conservation treatment was necessary. For this purpose, I built a new storage room in my villa at Santa Venera. Following the instructions of Michael Katsev from Kyrenia, and with the assistance of technicians from my own wine company, I set up a wood conservation treatment system using PEG, or polyethylene glycol. We carefully monitored and adjusted this water-based wax solution as we progressively increased its concentration and temperature solution over time. The setup involved several stainless steel vats provided with an oil heating system that was automatically regulated through thermostats. I had several small centrifugal pumps installed inside of the above-mentioned vats to allow the circulation of the polyethylene glycol solution. After the timber was desalinized, it was immersed in these vats with the help of small hydraulic cranes. And this is all at the expense of the Alagna family. After about 3 years, the wood was removed from the vats and placed on specific shelves inside the storage room to dry. The Archaeological Superintendency of Palermo would have wanted the assembly and the reconstruction of the vessel to take place in Palermo, but the mission and the citizens of Marsala remained firm in opposing this. At any rate, it was necessary to find a local structure that could be completely dehumidified. It was then that it was decided to convert the Baglio Anselmi, an abandoned storage building along the seaside, as the museum of the Punic vessel. In order to adapt the large room as an exhibition space, I took on the expense of buying an industrial dehumidifier, York, must be the brand, which was installed and worked for several years. At a later time, the superintendency provided the building structure with an air conditioning system. You will be hearing about the history of the Punic Ship Museum in a moment from Dottoressa Rossella Giglio's paper, read by Giulia Buetto, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Indeed, my support, Dr. Alagna's support, for the Punic ship still continues today. This year, the Cantine Pellegrino winery contributed several thousand euros to the Sicilian archaeological authorities for the preliminary cleaning of the ship hull following the most recent building restoration project of the Baglio Anselmi Museum building, where it is on display. I am bound to the mission of the Punic vessel by 50 years of memories. It has been a stimulating adventure which has enriched me on a cultural but also human point of view. To honor, we, my family and I, are bound by 50 years of sincere and mutual friendship, but also of deep regard and affection. Thank you.
Sorry, I was a bit mesmerised then. That was excellent. Thank you, Claire. I forgot I was chair. I had to be reminded by Stella. That was excellent. Very, very well read and really interesting insight. I had no idea how much the Alagna family had supported the work. So Rosella is going to come up and Giulia is going to be her voice, if I understand, for the next... Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So glasses on. So the next paper is entitled The History of Marsala's Shipwreck Exhibition from the Beginning to the Present. And it's a double act. Thank you, Rosella.
Con le frecce. Questo se serve indicare qualcosa. Ok. E buonasera a tutti.
Good evening.
Va bene. Grazie alla Fondazione Frosto e all'Università di Cipro per aver organizzato questa occasione così importante.
Okay, I'm the voice, so thank you very much to the Honor Foundation and the University of Cyprus to have been organizing this important manifestation.
Mi scuso, preferisco che venga letto un inglese più corretto della mia pronuncia terribile, scusatemi.
So I apologize that I will not able to read it because I have not a nice...
Grazie alla Giulia Boetta.
Okay, so we can start. I met Honor Frost in Marsala, Sicily, during the recovery of the Punic shipwreck in 1971-1974, a great undertaking for the Sicilian community, for which she was awarded the honorable citizenship of the city, and for the International Scientific Committee who recognized the well-deserved tribute. Honor accepted me with complacency. I was too young in those years to participate in the British mission, but I began to learn the work of the archaeologist, which I would choose as a professional activity a few years later. Although in those years, a president of a large group of volunteers, I was able to interrelate between institutions and the public for the valorization of the vessel and the work then underway with events and had so much success. For this reason, before speaking about the wreck, I want to briefly share on this occasion a few episodes of my personal memories with Honor. She was the kind of woman that spoke frankly. She told me thousands and thousands of stories about the Mediterranean and the underwater activity, about Cyprus and Lebanon, anchors and relics, about people and novelties of underwater research. I was warmly welcomed in her homes in London and Malta and spent holidays with her friends in Kent while visiting her beloved spots. I remember the magnificent dining room in her Welbeck Street lodge and the strange and unusual shapes that looked at us from the great paintings of Graham Vivian Sutherland today at the Tate Museum Gallery. In the 1950s, in Venice, on the beaches of the Lido, Honor, as a guest of Sutherland, met Carlo Levi, a painter of the neo-realistic group, who carved for her an owl-shaped octopus bone, which today enriched my collection. Useful and unavailable gifts, as tools, bijoux, and books, and bibliographic references from all over the world with the latest news in the steady correspondence of 35 years that I jealously keep. Then are handwritten letters and postcards with minute handwriting in which she recounted her scientific activities around the world, as well as ordinary daily activities, including the exhausting maintenance of the old and beautiful London home. I remember also the important scientific occasion in Palermo, Rome, and Athens for the Tropis to meet her friends Erita Salas, Michael Katzvev, George Bass, Lucien Bache, and discuss with them various research topics. In January 2009, I went to see her in her London home. She expressed the intention of a visit to Marsala for the following Easter. On the occasion, she also visited Segesta and Catalafimi to photograph the ship-ram-shaped shelves for the Belgian friend Lucien Bache. The last meeting occurred in London in February 2010. I was so much honored to be here today, and I wish to thank the organizers for choosing Cyprus as the venue for this important event. I've already been to Nicosia for an exhibition on the Phoenicians at the National Museum, but my desire was to visit the Kyrenian shipwreck, another famous Honor Frost enterprise. And in fact, the polyethylene glycol used for the Marsala wreck conservation was just the remnant of that use for the Kyrenia. I knew I would have to deal with various bureaucratic formalities to cross the Green Line, but in a short time, thanks to the involvement of Italian ambassador at the time, I managed to visit with him Kyrenia. But let us return to the recovery of the shipwreck of Isola Grande in 1971-1974. The scientific research included in situ data collection, wood recovery with then innovative exploration methods, and the immediate conservation process and restoration of the wood. Operations still today subject to scientific debate. Between 1975 and 1978, the wood was kept in tanks with aqueous solution containing different concentration of polyethylene glycol and until the consolidation was reached. And now I wish to briefly recall that the ship is preserved for about 10 meters in length and 3 in width. And the ship was connected to the naval battle that in 2041 BC ended the First Punic War in the sea off the Egadi Islands of Levanzo. It was possible to reconstruct, hypothetically, a length of 35 meters, a width of 4.80, and a tonnage of 120, with a possible crew of 68 rowers, 34 per side, which operated in the 17 oars for each side. The hull is made with a simple planking supported internally by a framing patterns, alternating floor timbers and half a frame. And the planking is simple and is coated and protected on the outside by lead sheets, fastened with copper nails. The bow part has been reconstructed thanks to the retrieval of the sister ship element, a second wreck located about 70 meters away from the Punic ship. At present, voilà, this is the lead sheeting, the small nails in bronze, voilà. The reconstruction of honor and the yes of the ramming wreckage, the sister ship with this task, and now okay. At present, several specimens of rostra are known, as shown in the new display of the superintendence of Trapani in the former Florio Tuna Fish Factory in Favignana and Formica. Thanks to the underwater archaeological research that, with his high-depth equipment in recent years, made it possible to recover them from the sea at east of Capogrosso, the northernmost tip of Levanzo Island. These important finds allow us to safely ascertain the actual dynamics of the Agadian battle. I want to mention here three of the rostra bearing inscription. The first, with a Latin inscription, with a Latin inscription on 4 rows, and then Egadi 4 bearing an inscription on 2 lines, topped by the relief decoration of a winged Victoria, and other with a Punic exclamation formula against enemies. The Latin inscriptions are intended to ensure the congruity of the operation that had produced the weapon and probably check its weights. The Carthaginian ram displays instead, as the epigraphists say, a curious coarse formula disorderly incised on the fender. The exceptionality of the Punic ship wreck find consists in the presence of guidelines and signs of Phoenician Punic alphabet engraved and painted on the frame in 2 sequences, which were to help the assemblage of different structures, obtained separately with the aid of predefined templates. The guideline and the scenes allowed to reconstruct the procedure and techniques of construction phases followed by the Punic shipbuilders, and the ship, which is built on shell-first process and principle and process, was built in a remarkable speed, almost in series, according to what ancient sources tell us, especially Polybius and Pliny. The freshness and colors of the wood, as well as the signs of the tools, show that the ship was new. In fact, the glue or mastic was used to fill the voids between the frames in the shell, did not have time to harden. The hull fragments were then fitted with modern wooden parts on metal supports to suggest the original hull shape in the large premises of Baio Anselmi, an industrial building of the 19th century built as a wine factory. We all know about the operation carried out, for which reference is made to the publications. Since 1986, the Baio Anselmi Museum in Marsala, under the jurisdiction of Superintendence of Trapani, was dedicated to shelter the wreck of the Punic ship. Following conservation treatment, the wooden finds should have been stored in an air-conditioned environment. And in fact, wood responds to environmental changes of temperature and especially to relative humidity, dilating and contracting itself. During the long renovation process of the museum building, the ship was protected with a maxi-packing tent, and then when the air conditioner was built in May 1999, it was possible to dismantle the tent and to show the ship. In recent years, the museum has been the focus of important tourist flow, but also for patterns of major study projects. A comfortable conference room, the large external lobby, and the well-equipped storehouses for the preservation and restoration of excavation findings bear witness to the years of institutional, scientific valorization and cultural activity carried out by the superintendents of Trapani. As advised by Honor Frost, the superintendents of Trapani in 1999 carried out a series of preliminary studies and measurements for the implementation of the project commissioned to Ole Krumin Pedersen and Paul Jensen in the Roskilde Museum for the new metal hull support. In the following years, cultural initiatives, exhibition and research projects of national interest were promoted, and also an European project named Nevis One, which has to put together all the European museums exhibiting ancient wrecks, and also other inter-university projects. But today, the exhibition is in a renovated museum, dated to 2017, envisage the modernization of facilities and redesign the exhibition hall with new finds found during the excavation carried out by the superintendents of Trapani. A new exhibition path offers new points of view to visitors, thanks to the creation around the hull of a transparent walkway, and allowing close-up view of the wood, as had always been the Honor Frost's mind. The walkways hides the old metal structure that holds the hull, that was designed by Frost and studied by Krumin Pedersen, and was assembled in 1978 by local technicians, the Bonanno brothers, and according to the hull lines suggested by engineer Austin Farrar. The showcases show the onboard ceramics and various materials and metals, and also some new metals findings coming from the ship. These finds, along with the epigraphic data and carbon-14 determinations, agree to date the ships in the middle of the 3rd century BC. Most likely, it sank on March 10, 2041 BC, during the naval battle which ended the Punic War, fought in the Sea of the Egadi between the two fleets at the command of Carthaginian Annone in the Roman Lutazio Catulo. The richness of the archaeological deposit of this area in the Mediterranean is confirmed by the presence in the Marsala Museum of other shipwreck display, such as the Ave wreck discovered in 1983 near Lido Signorino Beach. It's dated to the medieval time, the 12th century, and the late Roman wreck of the cargo ship discovered in Marausa in 1989, next on display in the museum exhibition, as well as a wider range of amphora that we retrieve and show a lot of different production factories of in a large span of chronology. And also other sporadic findings like the statues of warriors and from Capo Boeo, and more recently the golden treasure of jewels of the Hellenistic age. The wood has also been subjected to cleaning operation, and we hope that in future we will be able to restore the Marsala shipwreck again, maybe thanks to the help of the Honor Frost Foundation and the superintendency.
Questo è il suo biglietto.
And this is the Honor Frost last card for us. Thank you.
Wow, exemplary, kept to time perfectly. So if you'd like to take questions. Are there any questions for Rosella? You're not curious to know more about the history of the discovery of the wreck or the museum? You're off the hook, but thank you. Yes, don't worry. Absolutely. I think that the Alagna family maybe have put quite a lot of money into this vessel already. So thank you very, very much indeed. That was an excellent presentation, and with a personal note from Honor at the end, which is a nice way to finish. So, our next paper, glasses on. Now this is an exciting one, because we know that Honor wrote her first book on the ballet and subsequently Under the Mediterranean, but some of you may not know that she had another gem waiting to be published. And this is the paper that Elena Flavia and Claire Calcagno will now present, having done some research in the Frost archives over the last few years. Their paper is entitled, glasses on, The Second Life of a Phoenix, Honor Frost's Unpublished Chronicles of a Punic Ship in Sicily. Over to Elena and Clara.
Hello. We would like to thank the trustees of the Honor Frost Foundation for the opportunity to conduct and present our research. Also, we would like to thank Pietro Alagna and his family, the local community of Marsala, and the international community for decades of challenging and challenged efforts for the preservation and valorization of the Punic ship, which still remains today a unique artifact from the ancient world. How many times can a phoenix rise? The creature of which I tell emerged from waves, not flames, resuming its shape only to face another, perhaps final threat of destruction. Beneath this wordplay lurks the Punic warship, and the phoenix alludes not only to its resurrections, but to its lineage as well. These are the words with which Honor Frost begins her account of the Punic ship project in an unpublished book manuscript that we discovered 4 years ago in her original archives in London. To the audience here today, the Punic ship project is familiar. A mid-3rd century BC longship found in 1971 off the western coast of Sicily, near Marsala, by a team led by Honor Frost, a wreck that was excavated, conserved, and made ready for museum display by Frost during the 1970s and early 1980s. As Dr. Alagna's presentation has illustrated so beautifully, this could not have been accomplished without serendipitous encounters and circumstances. And as Dottoressa Rossella Giglio has just shown, the vessel's surviving remains can be visited today in a new display in Marsala. Just over 40 years since Honor Frost completed the final excavation report in 1976, we see that the Phoenix boat rises yet again in the form of a popular book titled The Second Life of a Phoenix. Today, we present preliminary research conducted under the auspices of the Honor Frost Foundation. We offer a snapshot of the manuscript contents and an outline of how we would like to place the story in its historical and cultural context. And we share also our oral history research, during which we have been reaching out to local project participants from Marsala to London and beyond, to collect their particular and unique perspectives on the experience and its meanings over time. About the actual discovery of the book itself. We found the manuscript while on a quick stopover in London in March 2013, following our research trip to Marsala, which Elena Flavia will tell you about in a moment. The Frost Foundation had kindly given us access to some of Frost's papers related to the Punic ship project. From a box mysteriously labeled Phoenix, I pulled out a 3-ring binder. Actually, the box wasn't labeled Phoenix, it was the binder, it was a generic box. And I opened the binder, and the very first words, which I just shared with you, revealed what the find was about. The Phoenix box also contained several folders of research notes, text revisions, additional chapter outlines, lists and copies of illustrations, bibliographies, and correspondence with potential publishers. In May, this past May, we were granted access to the Frost archive again to expand on our first brief read-through, which had been frantic. By this time, the collection had been professionally cataloged to archival standards, a great gift of the Foundation to scholarship for future generations. So thank you, Frost Foundation. The binder comprised the first 7 chapters. I keep going back to this chronology just to keep things in some order. The binder comprised the first 7 chapters of Frost's book in 139 typed pages. They covered the project from her very first visit to Western Sicily in the summer of 1969 with Gerard Capitaine, which we've heard about, through the end of the 4th and penultimate archaeological fieldwork season in 1973. These chapters, these 7 chapters, are almost completed drafts with occasional handwritten corrections and amendments. In this book draft, Frost provides context for ancient Lilybaeum's place in the central Mediterranean world, from its Phoenician connections to its environmental surroundings, which directly impacted the nature and process of shipwreck discovery in the area. I think I'm due for the next one, yes. Interspersed between her account of the project's evolution and the people who helped crucially over the years, she also writes about the history of archaeology in the region, including the persistent English connection to Western Sicily, both in archaeology and in the wine industry. Once survey finds began to point to a possible link to the sea battles of the Punic Wars, Frost provides a chapter on a scholarly review of the evidence to date. While anyone can read the proper chronology in the official Lilybaeum excavation report, the Phoenix manuscript goes into detail of how fortuitous Frost's arrival in Sicily was, let alone the discovery of the famous Punic ship. She had initially planned to conduct anchor research in Crete during the summer of 1969, but a change of plans led her to accept Capitaine's invitation to visit Mozia and its Kothon. While somewhat curious about Mozia, as she confesses, she was hardly interested in the western branch of the Phoenician seafarers. Her heart was firmly embedded in the Levant. It was during that visit to Marsala that the dredger captain Diego Bonini and Edoardo Lipari approached Capitaine and Frost, we've heard this, with the news of ancient ship timbers having been found in shifting sands near Marsala. They returned with permits in 1970 to conduct their first underwater field survey. But it was only towards the end of the second field season, in August 1971, during a somewhat straggly line survey, that the team photographer David Singmaster discovered the stern of the Punic ship. And in the first maps, it's referred to as the Singmaster site. This is all written up in Lilybaeum excavation report, but in the Second Life of a Phoenix, it is described much more picaresquely. In fact, we had the good fortune of locating David Singmaster to hear from himself what that moment of discovery was like. I think Elena Flavia might say something. He also met his wife on that expedition. They're still married, so a very important season. Amongst Frost's notes, beyond the binder, we come across detailed tables of contents with chapter summaries, which also included outlines for subsequent chapters that hint at what Frost may have intended to cover beyond the first 7 chapters. Topics not yet written about include the last field season in 1974 and the discovery of the sister ship the year before, the several years of conservation lab work up through 1977, the requisition of the Baglio Anselmi building for a museum space in 1978, and concerted actions by the local Marsalesi to prevent the artifact from being removed from their city. By that time, as Frost writes in cursory notes for future chapters, the ship had become a totem likened by locals to the Savior's cross. Also by that time, Dr. Alagna had been granted membership to the Order of the British Empire for his service to a British archaeological mission. And Honor had been elected, as we know, honorary citizen of Marsala. In each case, a foreigner honored for making a unique contribution to national cultural heritage. So what is the second Phoenix text like? Anyone who has had the pleasure of reading Honor Frost's 1963 book, Under the Mediterranean, will be familiar with her style, wit, and erudition. Her book, The Second Life of a Phoenix, is written in the same vein, clearly intended for a broad and interested audience. Each chapter is headed with an apposite epigraph from Cicero to T.S. Eliot, from Polybius to Alphonse Daudet. The writing is scholarly, citing sources and footnotes for whomever might wish to follow a lead, and the writing is also personal, as she shares the trajectory of her own learning curve as a newcomer to Sicily, and as an archaeological director, adapting and innovating fieldwork techniques with the resources at hand through challenging circumstances. An example, maybe I'll take a sip of water. An example of the practical challenges that they faced during these missions is quite funny, and I'm quoting from one of her chapters. Edoardo Lipari, the bailiff, had brought us a huge generator that had once lit all of Favignana, the island of Favignana, the largest of the Egadi Islands. This was another bestia, a beast, of truculent disposition, which, when coaxed into action, nearly beggared us by its gargantuan appetite for expensive oil. Exhausted by that struggle, we got ourselves wired to the generator of the hospitable campsite nearby, switching on for a few hours per day to power the machines, and by night, living by candlelight. So Frost also provides insights into her intellectual philosophies and priorities, citing on page 2 the dictum she attributes to her mentor, Kathleen Kenyon, that excavation without publication is destruction. With all that she was challenged by the Academy for her eclectic and non-traditional education in archaeology, her actions proved that her scientific standards were well above a significant community of well-degreed archaeologists who still neglect to publish what they destroy in excavation. As a scholar, she conducted herself to the highest academic standards. Regular season reports on the Marsala work were published in academic journals, starting with her first season report appearing in the first issue of the newly fledged IJNA. Her final report, published in the Accademia dei Lincei, remains a standard in the field, as Patrice Baumet stated. She also made sure, I think I'm a little ahead. Oh, man. No, I know, but the slides, here we go. Okay, I'm only one ahead, pardon me, in terms of image. She also made sure that project news was made available in Italian through the popular press and regular lectures. She was keen to ensure that her team's work and progress was shared directly with the local population, as shown by the photo exhibit she set up in the local middle school, Scuola Pipitone, that featured the plaster casts of the ship timbers that Dr. Alagna had made possible. This was in the mid-1970s, certainly a novelty in commitment to public engagement in that region at the time. This leads me to what we consider a very important find amongst the archive papers, a copy of the first chapter of the Phoenix manuscript translated into Italian by a Sicilian friend in the early 1980s. It seems quite clear that Honor herself intended to make her book available to her local Sicilian and Italian friends and colleagues. Much like the mythical bird that Frost chose to symbolize the entire project, the history of the Phoenix manuscript reflects the vicissitudes of the ancient ship itself. In addition to the difficulties of managing a complex archaeological project in a region with relatively modest amenities at the time, Frost had to contend with an increasingly intractable combination of local and national bureaucratic hurdles over the course of several decades. The travails of this unique ancient artifact are public, Amongst other publications, Lucien Bache's factual and eloquent obituary of a Punic ship, published in IJNA 20 years ago, relates the impassioned stance of the international community at the time, while contemporary local and national newspapers, as here, illustrate how evocative the vessel had become for the Massalese community. How am I doing? 2 minutes. I'm Madonna. With regard to the chronology of the book itself, our initial studies indicate that there were at least 2 distinct writing phases. The first phase, including the first 7 chapters and sample translation, perhaps began in the late 70s. It seems that Frost abandoned the project in 1986, a date which coincides with her resignation as director of the project through the British School at Rome. She appears to have resurrected the book roughly a decade later, at a time when there was renewed interest and indications of financial and institutional commitment for the care of the ancient vessel. But then it seems she quit the book a second time very shortly afterwards. The chronology still requires careful study. It is a delicate process also to determine what Honor's wishes were regarding the manuscript over time, and to ensure that her wishes be respected today. To come across an unpublished book manuscript that was apparently kept under wraps for many years is an important event for scholarship and for historians interested in the history of archaeology. The story of the Punic ship of Marsala is deeply, in fact viscerally, connected to the growth and development of maritime archaeology in the region. Consider that the peg was used to conserve the Punic ship timbers was the very same peg that Michael Katsev had previously used to conserve the Kyrenia ship, which he recycled and sent on from Cyprus to Frost for her Punic ship. When the conservation treatment of the Punic ship was completed, what remained of that peg and related conservation equipment was sent from Sicily to Bodrum to the Aina Conservation Lab there. So who knows what other ancient Mediterranean vessels have been so intimately connected on a cellular level. So you should come now, and there's one little last paragraph, but you should come because we're low on time. Anyway, we hope to have the opportunity to share this work beyond. Allora,
yeah. So
next one.
So, as my colleague and friend Claire Calcagna has very wonderful and detailed illustrated, the discovery of the 3-ring binder manuscript labeled Phoenix, which has been pulled out by Claire from a huge amount of boxes during our preliminary research at the Library of Honor Frost in 2013, the discovery itself was something that we immediately perceived was going to be an exceptional find. Skimming through the manuscript, the 139 pages of manuscript, even at first glimpse, we were extremely enthusiastic to discover a new keystone, a new gateway to the Honor Frost world, as a pioneering archaeologist, as well as a newcomer to Sicily in the late 60s, in a very particular historical period dominated by male, and so, also be a woman in this context is not an easy thing to cope. So there is an emotional angle in there, beautifully exploring the Punic ship project in its historical, political, as well as cultural context. It's like to open a window in the Honor Frost board community of collaborators who warmly helped and supported Honor during our field work, to see their mutual affection and respect, to investigate in her community of friends and colleagues, as well as her challenges over many decades of a number of institutional constraints and cultural bases. So Claire and I fully understood that we were going to support the Punic ship project in rising from the waves yet again, the unpublished manuscript, by which, emerging from the waves, the world of maritime archaeology, the history of maritime archaeology, will be recounted again to scholarship, to historian, as well as to a wider public. So this background perfectly dovetailed with what Claire and I have already started in 40 years ago, nearly, yeah? Because we decided to expand the background world of honor, we decided to open a window to the network of relationship involving trying to reach all of the people, the Marsala people involved in the project. So these are all our start base of list of people that we started to interview. And so we, in this way, on March 2013, we organized a special seminar held at the Cantine Pellegrino with the help of Pietro Lagna again, who kindly hosted all of the people involved. You can see just a few snapshots of what's happening in these days when we interviewed all of these people, from shipwriters to captain to simple helper. This is Passalacqua, who is the Friday man of Honor Frost, who was the best helper in all our field work. And you can see Gherardi, the owner of the dredger, who has been so emotional explaining his relationship with honor. And of course, Pietro Lagna in his archive in the background. So let's say that the Phoenix has given us the opportunity to investigate also all the people involved, also from an emotional point of view, along with the scientific side. So thank you, Honor Frost Foundation, for this great opportunity.
Well, thank you very much indeed. That was a really, really interesting insight into yet another aspect of Honor's life that most of us had no idea about. In this case, probably nobody had any idea about. I'd love to say we could have questions, but I'm afraid we don't have time. But it was really an excellent paper. Thank you. So we're moving now to the last paper of this session. I have to admit a slight fondness for this one because it is presented by a collaboration of all my either former or previous students, and they are all recipients of the Honor Frost Scholarship Award that the University of Southampton offers through the support of the Foundation to scholars from the region, and that's Cyprus, Lebanon, and we've yet to offer any to Syrian students, but we're hoping that that will happen in the future. So please can I ask, I don't know who actually is giving the paper. Oh, hang on. Oh, the lads. Okay, Nassim and Ziad, if you would take the floor, please. But please can I add, it's also a collaboration with Crystal Al-Safadi, Nassim Rad, Ziad Morzi, Lucy Saman, and Dorothy Chakra. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone, and thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to just say a few words about our work and our experiences as HFF scholars and early career researchers funded by the HFF. Now, today we've heard about many projects inspired by Honor Frost, work that is an extension of her research, projects that are funded and inspired by the HFF itself. And in this presentation, we just wanted to speak from the perspective of an HFF scholar and researcher that grew up in Lebanon and Egypt specifically, our selection, and have had the privilege of seeing the impact that the HFF has had on the development of maritime archaeology in our regions over time, and just talk about some of our research that stemmed from HFF support. Cool. So yeah, just to introduce the scholars over time. So for the MA program at Southampton, we have Crystal Safadeh, was the first who arrived in 2014, and she focused on the maritime world of the early Bronze Age Levant through space and time. Wait, this is PhD. Hold on. There we go. Oh, it's one behind. Okay, I know her thesis anyway. So she essentially looked at harbors along the Levantine coast dated to the Iron Age and Bronze Age, and she was looking at the natural affordances according to the environment, so wave action, wind patterns, etc., to start to build up a characterization of the region as a whole in the maritime world and gain a better understanding of it. Dorothy Chakra studied maritime heritage by examining legislation in Lebanon by using case studies in Lebanon. Many sites are being looted and are not technically under UNESCO protection because they're not 100 years old. And her work places focus on these shipwrecks so that we don't necessarily have to wait until they reach the 100-year mark, but we can actually work to make sure that they will be there when they're 100 years old. Oh, and then there's me. And I am doing an extension in the MA. Closer? Okay. In my MA, I expanded my research that I conducted at the American University of Beirut. I am essentially focused on the Roman economy in Lebanon specifically, but also its relationship with Cyprus, Syria, Egypt. And coming to Southampton allowed me to expand my research from focusing on amphorae to actually accounting for maritime trade and ports and harbors. On to the PhD, we have Crystal again. Okay. And in her PhD, she expanded her research to kind of give a different angle to maps. So rather than focus on geographical distance, she incorporated space and time as some of the main factors in some of the maps that she would make to gain an understanding of the perspective of ancient traders. How long would it take to get from one place to another, and how would they perceive this space? And she's actually depicting this graphically in maps, so it's pretty exciting. As for me, I'm continuing with the same research. What I'm essentially trying to do now is build up the same characterization of the Roman economy that we have for the Western Mediterranean when we talk about Africa and Spain and sort of the giants of the Roman economy. I'm trying to work on building a similar sort of characterization of the Roman Near East and put some of these sites on the map when we're talking about the Roman economy as a whole. And then we have Ziad Morsi, who is looking at Egyptian traditional sailboats. And he's looking at boat building techniques essentially along the Nile, seeing how they changed over time, and starting to propose some reasons for why this is the case. Okay, so that's essentially the education sort of angle in terms of the impact that the HFF has had on us personally and on our regions as a whole. But we also have capacity building. And this is in regards to the NAS Field School. I won't talk in too much detail about it because it was already mentioned in Lucy Sam'an's presentation. But I just wanted to stress the fact that this is the first underwater field school that has been conducted in Lebanon, and it's the hope that it's the first of many. So it's a big step in sort of establishing a sustainable education program in Lebanon that can help train future archaeologists. So it's very exciting. And then in terms of research, so that was kind of the section, I guess, about education and capacity building. And now we're going to look at research in the next stage, essentially, which is almost entirely Dr. Lucy Sam'an. So we're looking now at the Ain al-Mraisi underwater excavations. These were co-directed by Dr. Ralph Pedersen and Dr. Lucy Sam'an. Initially, it was recognized as a possible Iron Age wreck, which was subjected to looting and degradation in the past. But after further examination, it looks like it was an anchorage that was popular over many centuries. And it requires a wider survey and a greater focus to attain a deeper appreciation of the ancient maritime cultural landscape in the area. A documentary about the project and its methodology can be found on YouTube, and the links are down there. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to go into too much detail about it. And then we have the ENFE research project, which is, so the Department of Archaeology and Museology at the University of Balamand is a multidisciplinary project that considers the occupation and development of the site of ENFE in North Lebanon through time. And it is directed by Dr. Nadine Panayot Haroun. Now, within this context, the HFF is supporting the maritime component of the project through Dr. Lucy Sam'an's postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Balamand and the University of Southampton. It is the first initiative of its kind by HFF in Lebanon. Dr. Sam'an's research essentially looks at the ways in which the maritime landscape of ENFE has been used and modified to afford maritime activities. Her research also aims at reaching a wider appraisal of the underwater cultural heritage of the waters adjacent to the site to study the characteristics of the biophysical environment of ENFE in order to understand how these enabled and/or constrained maritime activity in the past. And this will help to reveal the nature of maritime connectivity of ENFE's coast with the sea and neighboring coastal communities. So this is just a little bit of the research that's going on in Lebanon at the moment, some of the developments that have been made possible by the HFF, and an introduction to us as HFF scholars. So I'm going to pass it to Ziyad to transition to the south.
Thank you, Nassim. Thank you and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ziyad Morsi, and I am honored to be an Honor Frost Foundation scholar. So in Egypt, an underwater survey project directed by Professor Ahmed Khalil at the Alexandria University was my first real chance to apply all the knowledge that I have been learning and obtained as a student of maritime archaeology at Alexandria University. The project that Professor Khalil will present later in this conference is funded by the HFF since 2015. Another opportunity that was given to me by the support of the HFF is the opportunity to work in the ENFE underwater project with Dr. Lucy Sam'an in 2 seasons in 2013 and 2016. As a byproduct of this generous support of scholars, a professional and a personal network was established. My fellow HFF scholars and I were able to work together in research projects. And from this network, we had pushed it one step ahead by organizing the first ever Maritime Archaeology Graduate Symposium, which will be gathering all UK-based early career researchers in the field of maritime archaeology in one place in Oxford to present their research projects and generate a discussion about Honor's favorite region. The MAGS, as we call it, the MAGS 2018, is generously funded by the HFF, and the Oxford Center for Maritime Archaeology will take place in Oxford next February. So we call out for all the students and researchers that would like to present to send us their abstracts. Yeah. Yes, yes, it's two. Sorry. Sorry. So beyond the primary objective of the HFF, the impact that the HFF had on us as scholars and early career researchers is the coordination and connection with wider academic community. A lot of experiences and training that we never would have had are now possible because of the foundation. This is the main point that we wanted to bring across the disciplines, and that many of the long-term impact of the HFF on us as early career researchers cannot be measured. We now have the opportunity to collaborate across disciplines with experts in the field, and for these reasons, we would like to thank the Honor Frost Foundation. And a special thanks goes to Dr. Lucy Blue for her continuous support for the scholars and for myself personally. And finally, the utmost thanks goes to Our Lady of the Anchors for looking down on us and guiding us towards the bright future of maritime archaeology in the region. Thank you very much.
Well, let's see. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you, Nassim and Ziad, for and I think I'm going to go back to point number 1 that Elpida said that she learned from Honor, which is to encourage and help young scholars of the future. And I hope that their paper has demonstrated that there's a lot of good young scholars coming up from the region that the Foundation are helping with their future careers. So thank you very much. If anybody has any questions, we actually have some time. Okay, all right, well, thank you all very much. We've got a very, very short break now because we're going to finish the last 3/4 of an hour with a panel session. This is designed essentially we'll have 3 panelists, Bob Nuruddin, David Blackman, yes, waving, good. David Blackman's here. He's still here, good. And Elena Flavia. We want to sort of finish off the session to discuss a little bit more about Honor and to think about her life and the impact of her work, which we've seen many examples of today. This is partly to help feed into a number of projects that the Foundation is supporting, which is one to do with a book project we hope that will continue. It's a pilot stage at the moment called Writing Honor, which is essentially a project which explores the development of maritime archaeology through the lens of Honor's life. As we've seen, she was so instrumental in the development of many different aspects of the field, and so this is an objective of the Foundation, I hope, going forward, to use Honor's life as a vehicle of exploration to see how the field has developed since she first got in that well. And so this is as an opportunity, I hope, for us to explore a few questions and to put out to you, all the other people who may or may not have worked with Honor and have spent time with Honor through TROPIS or in the field, to actually feed back to us a little bit and find out a little bit more about how Honor's life impacted on you, directly or indirectly. So we are allowing a little break, but please, there's no coffee. There's just enough time to whiz to the facilities or take in a bit of nicotine, depending on where your preferences lie. But if it would be really good if you could come back here in how many minutes? Somebody brief me, because I need to put my glasses back on. 10 minutes. Thank you very much, Stella. Teamwork, as ever. 10